Virtual selling is all the rage right now, and my friends at Vidyard have put together all the hot tips to kill it at virtual selling. They already offer an easy to use video creation tool to help connect you to your customers and referral partners. And now, listeners of the Badass Direct Sales Mastery podcast not only get free access to the Vidyard video service, but they are also offering their free State of Virtual Selling report. You can get your copy at vidyard.com/badass. You can be a virtual selling virtuoso. Just go to vidyard.com/badass to discover how.
Welcome to the Badass Direct Sales Mastery Podcast with your direct sales dom, Jennie Bellinger. Badass Direct Sales Mastery is a podcast for rock star direct sales moms who are determined to make their business kick ass. Jennie will share her knowledge of effective sales and recruiting techniques, tips to get what you want from your business, and will interview direct sales professionals and leaders from various companies. The interviews will give insight to how these rock stars got to where they are and where they plan to grow in the future. And now, the direct sales dom, Jennie Bellinger.
Welcome back to another episode of Badass Direct Sales Mastery. I'm your host, your direct sales dom, Jennie Bellinger. I am here today with Nathan Perez. Now, Nathan Perez is someone who was pitched to me, and as soon as I read the information that they shared with me about him, I immediately honed in on one area and said, oh my gosh, my BDSM crew would love to hear about his 20-minute networking meeting. So let me tell you a little bit about Nathan, and then we'll get him into the conversation. Nathan Perez is an executive and career job search coach, a professional speaker in the career field, and a former executive in the retained executive recruitment industry. He's also a multi-award winning co-author of the 20-minute networking meeting, Learn to Network, Get a Job. I love that. So welcome to the show, Nathan.
Thank you, Jennie, very much. I'm happy to talk to you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, I immediately honed in on this whole 20-minute networking meeting thing. I love this idea because so many people who go into the networking world have no idea how to do it right. And they end up, unfortunately, shooting themselves in the foot because of the way that they go about networking. And in the executive world, in the C-suite world, networking is everything, right? So let's talk a little bit about, how do you train your executives, or how do you coach your executives to network the right way?
Right. Well, first of all, it's being prepared. Lots of people, when they think, when you go into a networking, there's a few different pieces to this, but people kind of think that, the longer the meeting, the better. People kind of feel like, if I've been there a really long time, then something good must have happened because I was there for a really long time. So it's about time management. It's also about making sure that you prepare so that you've done research on the person that you're meeting with and also their organization, because there would be absolutely no reason to request time of somebody and their knowledge, believing that they could help you if you know nothing about them or their organization. So I would say the two biggest things would be time management, right? And having an agenda that is informed by your research, but also being reciprocal about your networking. When we go into networking meetings, people think, it's about me trying to get this and that, what I need, but without thinking about, what you can do in return. So that's exactly how I coach my executives.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, because, especially, and so you're talking about networking in a one-on-one networking type of situation, it sounds like. So that's good to know, right? So, because that's a very different approach than if you're going into a group networking situation, which we're not doing so much right now, at least not in person in most parts of the country here in the US. So are most executives doing one-on-one networking and not the group networking?
Oh, for sure. I think it's probably important to further define, clarify what that really means. If you are in a big group and it is a networking discussion or a networking group, but you're actually, still standing in a circle or sitting in a circle and you're sharing information, well, I mean, there's networking to that, but really that's still kind of a group discussion in which people are sharing information. If you are doing one-on-one networking, well, then that can really be called much more of a networking meeting. The idea is that you are building relationships. Relationship building is a cornerstone to networking. And when you are, talking with a whole group at one time, eventually, like once you all break up and you realize, hey, 2 or 3 people mentioned very specific things that I want to talk about, I'm going to go to each one of those. That's when you start to hone in on the actual networking.
Oh my gosh, I love that. So yeah, I definitely agree, because when you think about networking, it's really about, if you're the hub of your networking circle there, as you're making connections out, they're always in a one-to-one, it's a one-to-one connection, right? It's not like a one-to-many connection. It's you're connecting one-on-one, but then you have all these individual connections going out from you as the hub. That's awesome. And so I like that you're talking about starting with the relationship being reciprocal, because of course, how many of us, I mean, we're not going to be able to see anybody raise their hand because they're listening to this a few weeks after we're recording this, right? But how many of us love to walk into a networking meeting or pop into a Zoom or, some sort of video conferencing and immediately try and get sold by the other person? Yeah. No hands up. Right. So
many, right.
that reciprocity is a really important piece. So how do you coach the people that you're working with to be prepared for the reciprocity piece?
Right. Well, first I should say that, okay, so the 20-minute networking meeting, what it is it's 5 steps, right? It's just 5 steps and each one of those 5 steps has a time limit. So when you get to this point in the meeting, it makes very just logical sense. But here's how it would probably sound. If you and I were sitting across from each other, kind of like we are right now, and having a discussion, and we were talking about broadcasting or radio podcasting or sales or whatever it may be. But by the end of it, and I've been taking notes this entire time, really appreciating what you've shared with me. At the end of it, I would tell you, Jenny, thank you so much for taking the time with me. I really got value out of these things. I've written a whole bunch of notes. Now that we've talked about us, is there any way that I can be of help to you? Can I help you for the help that you've just given me? And I'll say right up front too, when you ask this question, it tends to be a big surprise to contacts, because business tends to be transactional. It's just all about business. But when you ask something like this, that's more personal in nature, it takes people off guard, but it changes the game. It is like the question to ask of all questions. And also, by the way, it's not just about the professional side of things. If you ask this question in your personal life, you will see the dynamic of your relationships with people change almost instantly. So it's about being structured, but it's also just the simplicity of things. You just sat there and you got help from someone else and you say, thank you so much. How can I help you in return?
I love that. So now everyone's wondering, because you already hinted at it here. There's 5 steps to this meeting. Now, I don't want to give away the whole thing, because then they're not going to go read the book. But can we briefly cover what those 5 things are, so that way they go, ooh, I need to know more. I'm going to go get the book and read it so I can learn more, right? So what are the 5 steps in this 20-minute meeting agenda?
Right. Okay. Step number 1 is a really good impression of you. Okay. It's the great first impression. That's important because it kind of sets up the feel and the tone, like in the direction that your meeting is going to go. And then the second step is a 30 to 60 second snapshot of your professional background. If you are networking for sales or business development, or you're an entrepreneur, then maybe it won't necessarily be just about you. It could be about your products or your services or the organization as well. And I hear all the time, gosh, 30 to 60 seconds, is that enough time? Yeah, you can squeeze a lot into 60 seconds. And the idea here in this kind of meeting is that you are reserving time for your great discussion. And the great discussion is step number 3. And in the great discussion, the way that we've structured this out, it's comprised of 5 key questions. I won't get into all the questions, except to say that the fifth key question is, how can I help you? Step 4 is wrapping up the meeting, which is very simple. Handshake, a wave. If you're in person, it's a warm handshake, warm smile, saying thank you. If you're on video, it's the same thing, except there's really not a handshake because it's on video. And then afterward, following up. Step 5 is following up. And there's 2 kinds. There's immediate and ongoing. Immediate is that quick thank you for the meeting. And then ongoing is to keep your network alive over time.
Yeah, no, oh God, I love this because people, if they just have these 5 steps with 5 questions to ask, I can just see how their business is going to absolutely skyrocket because
Yeah.
most of us, and I'm going to lump myself in this group here, most of us go into a majority of our networking meetings completely unprepared. We don't
Yeah.
have an agenda. We don't have an idea of what's going to happen or how it's going to go. And just by having this simple thing that helps guide through the process, it's going to absolutely make the other person realize that, hey, this is someone I should probably do business with because they're prepared and
Right.
there's a process they're taking me through. Right. And I think that's
Right.
super, super important. And one thing that also stands out to me in what you said was that 30 to 60 seconds seems short when you say it like that, but trust me, if you've ever been to a group networking meeting, right? And they say, okay, everybody has 60 seconds to share about themselves, their products, their service, their company, whatever. Let me tell you, by the end of the 60 seconds, most of the time, my brain is already like, okay, move on.
Yeah.
I
Right.
don't need
Right.
all of that because by the end of the minute, they're rambling, right?
Yes.
So,
Exactly.
ha-
20 people, it does equate to 20 minutes, and that's just at 60 seconds, right? And if
yeah.
someone goes over that and they start rambling, then if you multiply that times 20 people, the next thing you know is all you're doing is having one big group introduction.
Yeah, exactly. And not really getting much of anything done, which, if you're wanting to network, people want to walk away feeling like they were productive
Yeah.
and, just learning that 60 seconds about somebody, it's a good start, don't get me wrong, but it's going to be really hard to feel like you've actually done something if you just know 60 seconds about somebody and that's it. There's nothing else about it. So,
Yeah.
and
Right.
as you're taking people through this process, so it's great to know this process, but how are people meeting new people in these times now? Because we're not necessarily going, I mean, I think the world is maybe fingers crossed starting to open up a little,
Yeah.
but how are you helping your clients meet new people to have these 20-minute networking meetings with?
Largely it's over video. And the thing is that it's going to only grow. It's just going to become more and more popular. Let's just say we go back to a complete normal. The fact of the matter is, because of this last year and the whole craziness that has been the pandemic,
Mhm.
we had no choice but by default to go and learn the technology. And this is on the professional side and the personal side. The professional side, we just haven't been going into the office the same way. We haven't been going to restaurants and bars to meet with people in the same way. And on the personal side, we couldn't see family members in the same way. So now we started to use the tech and we have this familiarity of the tech. And by the way, it's not just us, you and I, and those listening. This is literally the entire planet that has
Yeah.
done the same thing. As a consequence, we have begun to use the tech for the networking meetings, which means that now that we are familiar with the tech, and even if stuff goes back to normal, the very convenience of being able to meet and talk and exchange information it's pretty appealing to just about all of us. We can do it anytime during the day, and now we're much more open to it, even complete strangers. So this is going to, it's not just going to stick around, it's actually going to grow. And by the way, we have 5G. And they're
Oh
already
yeah.
starting to talk about a 6G. I don't know if it'll be called 6G in the end, but 5G is 25 times faster than the network that we have now, which means that it makes networking by video that much easier, that much more convenient. We're going to be able to do that from just about anywhere. So it's not going away. It's going to be by video. So I teach my clients, how to, the meeting is the same. Everything that I just described, you can hold it exactly the same way over video or over the phone. So really what I do is I help my clients tweak how they're on camera. It's kind of
Yeah.
production values because the networking is pretty much still the same.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I definitely agree with all this. I would have to say in the last year, I have become way more productive in my day because I'm not spending time in my car driving from
Right.
meeting to meeting, which used to be my life pre-pandemic because my kids were at
Yeah.
school. So I could go network all over the St. Louis area. And I oftentimes did network like there were times when I would find myself in the west part of St. Louis and then the south part of St. Louis and then the central part and then end up
Right.
on the east side of St. Louis, east side of St. Louis, which is where I live. Right. And so, it was not unusual for me to put 100 miles a day on my car,
You
not
bet.
every day, but it happened. And now I I rarely
Yeah.
drive. And
You
so
could
I'm
have all those same meetings, right? All those same meetings
yes.
almost back to back now, sitting in the same spot and being in all those separate locations in the same sort of way. Yeah.
Oh, let me tell you, I am not just networking in St. Louis anymore. I am now networking nationwide and even
Yes.
internationally. Anybody who's been listening to my podcast for a while knows that I'm a member of BNI and I'm a huge fan of it. And one of the great benefits that has come out of the pandemic is now I've had the opportunity to literally network with people in Canada, the UK, South Africa, India,
Wow.
Australia. I mean, I have been to networking meetings in Canada and and the US so far. I'm hoping to visit a UK chapter soon. I'm hoping to get to visit a South African chapter soon and maybe an Indian chapter. We'll see.
Right.
But I think what's really cool about all of this is that there are, many of us now have taken our businesses completely online because of what's happened. And so we are no longer constrained to our local area, which was a limiting belief that we all thought we had to stay in our little bubble of
Yeah.
within 100 miles of ourselves, right? So, are you finding that your clients are also starting to network further out than they were before?
Oh, for certain. Absolutely. And it all started with very much what you described, kind of within a limited area, or this is kind of where I need to stay. But the truth of the matter is that the information you get could be anywhere and it could still apply to you to where you're sitting right now. So now that the idea has opened to be able to share with people, there's no commute or whatever else, you can get some fantastic information from people who are sitting anywhere else and still be, applied to you right where you are. So for sure. And it is also international. It's across state lines, but it's definitely international as well. So for instance, right, if you worked for a big corporation and you wanted to network with someone who also worked in a big corporation, but they're on the other side of the Atlantic, it makes a lot of sense for two people who work internationally from a different perspective to get an additional perspective on things. So people's, minds have really, really opened, just like the opportunities have to network.
Yeah, I have to say I really am in that group of people you were talking about before who is completely in love with networking online now. It's really funny to me when I hear people locally here, sometimes, they seem to be complaining about it, but as soon as I start pointing out to them like, well, are you expanding outside of St. Louis? I mean, cuz seriously, your business had to have gone online. So are you meeting with people in other states? Are you meeting with people in other countries who could be buying or referring your service?
Yeah.
And they
And not really, huh? That's kind of the response you've been getting is, not yet. Not,
not
I
yet.
haven't thought
Yeah,
about
yeah,
that yet.
yeah. And I'm like, well, you have access because some of the people I'm talking to, of course, are BNI members. You have access to 275,000 members worldwide. You have access to
Uh,
10,000 chapters that you can go visit virtually because all of them are online right now. Why
right,
wouldn't you? Why
right.
wouldn't you? And so it oftentimes it's just because number one, they hadn't thought of it. Number two, they didn't know how to go find these chapters. And I'm like, Google? Where do you want to take your products or services into? Google BNI Massachusetts. Google BNI California. Like
Right.
it's not that hard, people. So
You know, by something I'd like to build on a point that you were saying, why
yeah.
not? Why wouldn't you? This is hopefully an opportunity to redefine what networking really is. I think
Mm,
sometimes we have it in our head what networking is. It's sort of a slick and smooth, or you're real salesy, or you're dropping names and whatever. And so therefore networking has this negative connotation to it. But networking really, really is just the obtainment or the exchange of information. You might have purposes or outcomes for your networking, but it's just the obtainment or the exchange of information. So when you think about networking with people who could be in any of those 10,000 chapters, well, that should hopefully just blast the doors open to opportunity for you when you realize all you're hoping to do is just get some information. In which case, you can network with anybody, right? You just got to find them and look them up. But that's all you're doing is asking a handful of questions.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love it. So, oh man, I cannot wait to read this book. I'm going to have to get a copy myself for sure. So guys, the book is called The 20-Minute Networking Meeting, Learn to Network, Get a Job. And Nathan, you have a really generous offer for our listeners, which is a free audiobook to the first 5 people who contact Nathan through his website. So what's your website?
That website is nathanaperez.com, nathanaperez.com. And you can learn more about the books and stuff in there as well.
That's awesome. So BDSM crew, you guys know how this goes. As long as you're not driving, grab your phone, click on the episode, scroll up just a little bit, and you're going to find the show notes. And we have a link directly to Nathan's website. So that way you guys can jump in there, hurry up. Don't assume just because you're listening to this later that other people actually took action and went and claimed one of those 5 audiobooks. So hurry up, reach out. Nathan, should they say anything specific to you to let you know that they came from my audience? Would you like them to say,
absolutely.
I came from Jennie, I came from the Badass Direct Sales Mastery podcast? How would you like them to let you know that they came from here?
I think they should let me know by giving your name and the name of your podcast. Those 2 of those things. How close are we listening, folks?
Exactly. So jump on his website, go send him a contact him through his website and say, hey, I heard you on Jennie Bellinger's podcast, the Badass Direct Sales Mastery podcast, and I want that free audiobook. Please. We all want to be polite. So I would like that audiobook, please. Am I one of the first 5, right? So ask nicely. And I'm willing to bet you, hey, like I said, you could be listening to this a year from now and you may still be the 5th person. So don't assume, right? Don't assume that other people did it, because not everybody is great at taking action. Because I actually have an episode coming out pretty soon called Ready, Aim, Aim, Aim. It's going to talk to those people who aren't yet taking action. So Nathan, thank you so much. This has been an awesome conversation. Thank you for sharing your expertise.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks very much. It really was. It was a fun conversation. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So BDSM crew, you guys know how this goes. Make sure you stay tuned because there is another badass episode on its way.
Thanks for listening to the Badass Direct Sales Mastery Podcast with your direct sales dom, Jennie Bellinger. Why are you waiting to go to badassdirectsalesmastery.com? Don't make the dom get her whip. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to share it with another rock star that you know in direct sales after you subscribe to the podcast so you won't miss any future episodes. You can also check out the show notes for links and any contact information mentioned in today's episode. We'll see you next time.